right, Dalton. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take the fixed straight just like it is and go out there and run a couple of laps. It's going to look really weird to watch you drive, but your hands are moving, but the wheel's not. So if anybody's wondering, Dalton and the rest of us have a Google Drive folder. So when he runs laps, the telemetry uploads to Google Drive, and then it goes to my computer where I can pull up his telemetry without him having to send me his IBT files.
32.286.
Dustin,
All right. 32.216.
you're good after this lap, Dalton.
Thirty-two point two nine five.
All right, let's look. They don't look bad, actually, to be honest with you. For a fixed setup, the A car is usually in the track. The B car, they did okay. Ride heights are still too high. So, again, that's what Dustin and I were talking about earlier. You have to, on the B car, it's sad, but with the ride height rule, you have to almost use springs to get the car on the track. So you don't really get to pick the package that you really want because you can only go to 7 is the lowest, the minimum ride height. So if you, I mean, they're running a 411 or something like that. Let me take a look. It, I mean, it looks good on telemetry, but you're 5.5 inches in the air. So, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, we can only go down a half inch. So at most, we would still be 5 inches above the track for the rear. So that's just going to put the spoiler too far in the air. So, give me a second here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and change these tire pressures to the maximum on the left side. The lower the tire pressure is, especially on the left, the more drag there is, so that the car will be more sluggish. We'll go down to the minimum on the right. These are things that we usually do. If you start with a fix, these are just necessities that's really not going to change the dynamics of the car or the suspension. This is just, it's almost like it's how it is, period. It's the fastest way around the track.
And the one thing I may add here, Chris, if I may, the tightness, the radius of the corner is going to be a big factor in that split between left side and right side tire pressures. A lot of times we're limited by iRacing, but you'll find that on a tighter corner, you're going to want a higher split. I mean, it's the same analogy of a cup when you lay it on its side and you roll it, and it'll go around in a circle. The bigger difference in diameter between that top and bottom circle will change top or how tight that cup will rotate. And that's the same thing with the car. You're basically affecting you're changing the stagger with air pressures.
Yep. And I had that other screen open when I was talking to them. So all I did from the fix set is just move the right side tire pressures down to 44, which is the minimum, and the left side to the maximum, which is 31. I'm going to go ahead and I put my cambers back at 2. That's max. I think we can run a 370 here. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Move my truck arm preload back. And just for now, I'm going to go ahead and put the toes back at 0 across the front.
While you're doing that, just to answer a couple questions in the chat. Yeah, we just took the fix setup for Kentucky here, and that's what we're starting with. Adding some of those basic changes right off the bat are typically a good starting point on any intermediate track.
All right, I think these are just necessities that I go ahead and put in. I'll move this down. All right, Dalton.
Ready?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you should just pick up time just with tire pressure adjustments alone because of how sluggish lower tire pressures make the car feel. So you picked up almost 2/10 just by putting the tire pressure. And that goes across the board. There are a couple of tracks where you don't want to run. The tire pressures on the left side is high, um, and there's tracks where iRacing doesn't allow you to run them, and so you end up having a 20 psi split. So if you ever experience that on your first lap and there's a 20-25 psi split, I wouldn't necessarily say you need to adjust the setup on lap one, because as the second and the third lap goes on, those pressures are going to come up, and so that split is not so drastic. Your times are much closer. Alright, so we actually went up just a little bit on the left and down on the right as far as the ride height, but we're still too high. So let's
Want to share that screen, Chris?
yeah, hold on.
think we lost your mic there, Chris.
Yeah, I forgot. Push to talk versus the voice activation. Did they? Yeah, I just put the same springs and set the ride heights back that we ran back in July, and that's because that gets the spoiler on the, or the rear spoiler on the ground or out of the air. I wish we didn't have. I wish we didn't have ride height rules, but we do. So you kind of force and limited on what springs you can put in, or the spring packages. Um, but I think we ran a 175. I'm almost positive we did.
31.83.
I'm not too worried about your lap times now, because I know that's going to pick up the front end, and we're fixing to reset and put those cambers in the front end and get that front end down, and then your speed will pick up drastically. I just want to make sure that we're at the proper rear end height.
While Chris is pulling up this Motec file, I'll just let you guys all know this is the track states at 100%. The track or the time of day is the same time of day as the race next week. April 1st, 2:17 was the start time. Current track temp is 107.
All right, so we came way down on the rear. We gained over an inch, so we're still a little higher than I want to be, but it came down drastically. So that's probably why we ran those springs the last time we were here. So the ride heights are at minimum. We can't go any further as far as in the garage, and even with that spring package, we're still up in the air a little bit in the back. The problem is we are way high on the splitter. Inch and a half is the average. I mean, that's just too much. So we need to. I'm gonna go ahead and probably put those cambers in there, max cambers. That's gonna pick up speed, but also it's gonna allow us to start setting the front end. The more camber you add on the right side, the more it's gonna go lower. So this is actually gonna pick up. This is gonna go down. So we'll go ahead and max these cambers out on both sides. Alright, so now, I mean, we're failing, but we got the cambers at 6 on both sides. And now the car is rolled over to the right. So I'm just going to use preload to bring the right side back up and bring the left front back down. Alright, so they're about even. We'll reset the cambers to pass. I didn't think we could get it. We'll get it back later. I'm going to reset this back to 0. Now we're still too high up here. I want to get these as flat as we can on the front as we do on the back. We'll do the right side. It's a little bit higher. Now our preload's off, so we'll bring it back up, which will bring the left front right height back up. Still just a little bit higher, so, and that preload's actually a little higher than what we started with, so we'll bring the preload down and the ride heights at the same time by moving the left front perch back down. And now we're failing just a little, but we need to go fix our camber. Everything you do with springs, perches, preload, it changes your camber, so make sure you watch it every time. If not, I would have sent Dalton right out there with cambers, which is defeating the purpose of what we're doing here. There we go. Got them back. Now we're in 5 flat across there. We're still a little bit higher on the left rear, but we're still in the flats. Go run that one, Dalton.
While he's running these laps, I'll go ahead and talk about Kentucky's line. That bottom's just so bumpy, and with progressive banking, it's just not the place to be. You want to be right down on that first seam.
Dalton's time should pick up just by camber gain, not even aero. Yeah, he dropped another couple of tenths.
Yeah, we discussed the possibility of, or the ways we could show throttle inputs as well, but with a driver and a crew chief, that just wasn't possible. We wanted the same driver to handle all the laps, and so that's the reason we went this route.
And this is what we do in the A car as well. I drive a lot, but a lot of times it's more about getting in the car, and because you have to build the setup individually to every team or teammate, and they want something a little different in their car. Plus that way what I feel when I build the setup may not be what they feel. So if they're comfortable with it based on what they tell me, then there's nobody to blame at the end of the day. You told me you wanted this, so we put it in there. All right, so we went down a little bit. The cambers went down a whole lot, or made the right front drop a whole lot. We're still up in the air, which is fine. The splitters, they're going about the same distance as far as height. All right, we got to bring this thing closer to the track. When this splitter starts coming together, the rear end and the front end will start coming together. It's showing that the splitter's too high on the left. We see that in the front right heights, it's too high on the left. Behind the frame rails, same thing on the rear of the car. It's way higher. So once the splitter starts coming down and we bring that car down, these numbers will come down and start matching the right side as well. I'm going to go back to this telemetry screen here for a second. We're probably, you really don't want to be, my averages on pretty much any set you build want to be lower than an inch. We're a half inch already higher on the left side than what we want to be. So what I'm going to do is, now that and I don't know what the shock spring needs to be quite yet. Just with that, we can't go down any further on the left front perches because we're already at the minimum. So because we're about a half inch or almost a half inch higher on the left side, I'm just going to remove a half inch of packer on the left front just to see. Now we could be, we're still high on the right side, not as much, but without doing calculations, and I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. Without doing the calculations, if I was to lower, I think we were at 1.3 on the right side. If I was to lower this 3/10 right away, I might be buried in the track. The reason for that is, without doing any kind of calculations, you have no idea, especially in this B car, where you can't get under 4 inches of shock deflection to know that you're on the shock spring. A lot of times the left front will actually hold the entire car up. So do one side at the time. Whichever side's the highest, that's the one it's probably going to be more engaged than the other. So that's what I would just start with. Don't do the lower side and bring it down when you've got the other side that's still way higher, even before you move the packers. So with that, Dalton, go out there and run. We took a half inch down on that packer on the left front. Ride height stayed the same, camber, everything is still the same. Go run another lap. Oh, let me fix your preload for you. Zero it out. There you go.
While Dalton's making this run, I'll talk a little more about that, or what Chris touched on, the right front being held up by the left front. That happens because of the sway bar typically. And one way you can check that, if you're worried that may be the case and you've lost all adjustability in your right front, just take the packer completely out. And if you're not hitting the track, then you know you're being held up by the sway bar and the left front spring, whatever. And then you can know, and you can make the necessary adjustments you want to make, be it sway bar or whatever, to get some adjustability back in that right front.
Oh man. Dalton, your time should pick up drastically. that tells me right there we gained that an error. We didn't even change anything really as far as ride heights or we've already put the cambers in there. The rear springs are there. The ballast is still the same, and you picked up another 2/10. And that's just aero getting closer to the track.
As you guys listen to his throttle inputs, where he lifts, where he picks it up, note that there's a small delay. So don't end up making the mistake of overdriving entry, especially here. Your runoff is where you're going to get most of your speed.
All right, let's see what happened here. So, yeah, look at that. We went from 1.5 and 1.3 just by moving that left side. We're down to 0.9. Now the splitter's closer to the track on both sides. We went down. So that tells me right there, because the right side went down, that left side was holding the car up. This is starting to come together. The right or the left side is no longer higher than the right side. And this is measured obviously by the frame rails. Same thing in the rear. We're almost under 4. The left rear still needs to come down just a little bit, but it's not too bad. We can control that roll with track bar. So even though we can't go down on the purchase anymore, we can still twist that car just a little bit in the rear without affecting the front a whole lot, just by putting the track bars up, which I'm sure Dalton is going to want to put them up anyhow. So now I'm going to show you how, with us being that close, I mean, these numbers are close, these numbers are close. I'm going to show you how we know where that shock spring is. And a lot of people don't understand this Excel spreadsheet. It's not necessary, but it does help with balance and weight transfer on the car, especially as the run goes on. Because before this, we didn't know that the left front was holding the car up. You don't know how much that, what is it, a 4,000 pound spring and a 6,000 shock spring? You don't have no idea how much of that spring is being used. So now these numbers are not correct because I've got to put the formula in there. But anything above this line means the shock springs are engaged. Anything below means they're disengaged. This is not for this setup. We're going to run the numbers. And find out. So this is a spreadsheet that I have. It's been on the website forever. Let me open up Dalton's Garage so I can put the right numbers in here. So we're using a 1437 Packer, or 1.437, however you want to say it. And his shock deflection is, what, 4.75. Same thing on the right side. We're using a 2.625. And his shock deflection currently is 2.60. These numbers don't mean anything to y'all. They're just there for mathematical purposes. The numbers down here at the bottom is what we pay attention to. This needs to be put into Motec in the mass formula in the current workbook that we have, that I've posted on the website, in order for you to get a reading on what's happening for that particular lap. So I'm going to go back over to Motec, 6501. In order to do that, we'll go to Tools, down to Maths. The workbook that we use that's on the website is under Weight Forces, and it says left front bump spring engage. Double click that. And do you remember what it was? It 6501, Dustin? I can't remember. That's what happens when you get old. Yes, so 6501. I'm going to click on the last zero, There's a negative sign. You cannot erase that. Put the number right behind the negative sign. So it's 6.501. If it's correct, and if the formula is right, it'll say all channels are valid. We'll click OK. Let's do the right side. We were at 3913. So I'm going to go over here. 3.913. We hit OK. There. That's the shock spring is, of course, over the course of a lap. The number that I pay attention to the most is how much it's being engaged. It's maximum engagement. Obviously, we're almost a couple of tenths higher on the right side than we are the left side. But you can see pretty much the left side. There's a couple of times. The back straightaway is not as important because there's no weight transfer going on there. It does affect your ride heights, but so this dip that we see over here in the right side, that's normal. Usually you're going to disengage the right side going down the back straightaway. And actually that's kind of what you want to do, because usually the right side sticks up just because of how much we've got the car propped up going into the corners for banking. This will become even more, it'll be worse on a higher bank track than it will be on a flatter. But we're both engaged. But you're talking about a 6,000 pound shock spring is engaged almost 2/10 more. So that there's a lot of weight being transferred over to the right to be able to push a 6,000 pound shock spring down. And that's probably due to Packers. So I'm going to go back over here and let's see. Let's bring this right side back down. We'll go, yeah, it's almost 2/10. So let's go ahead and bring it down 2 clicks. That's still not quite enough, but I also don't want to be hitting those bumps going into the corner, especially in turns 3. So I'm going to move that back down to 2.5. This is just a quirk of mine, but I'm going to go ahead and go back so I don't have to redo it. I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet. We didn't do anything to the left side. I'm going to go down to our new Packer that we have now, which is a 2.5. The shock deflection did not change because they're not engaged sitting on pit road. The A car, yes, that will move if you are engaged. But for these purposes, it's not. So now our new number on the right side is 4.038. So I'm going to go ahead, just so I don't have to do it when it's over with. We're going to go back over here to our tools, math. And I believe it's 4.038. Is that right, Dustin? Were you paying attention?
Nope.
I didn't think you were. I'm going to hit close. Now this is not right because that was the last lap with the Packer that was already in there. But you can see it's starting to bring it down. So Dalton, with that, go out there. Let's see if that right side starts coming down as far as shock spring engagement without hitting the track. The whole goal is to get both of them as close as you can, and then you can leave the Packers where they're at. And if you need more spring rate on the left side or the right side, you could do shock springs. You're not going to affect the Packers. You're not going to affect the ride heights. In the sim, in the garage, you will dynamically on the track, but you won't see a big difference. The higher the shock spring, the closer you can get the splitter to the track. The problem with that is the higher the shock spring, the more stiffer you're making the front end. So you lose.
It's bumpy.
Right. You lose a little bit of handling, but now if this was Michigan, I might run 7,000-8,000 pound shock springs maybe even a 10th. I think Keegan built a 10,000-pound shock spring back last May or June over there. And that's the way to go on a place like Michigan, just because of how much speed and how much you need that splitter to stay sealed down the straightaway. I have no idea what your laps are.
What are you feeling there, Dalton? Still really tight?
Yeah, it's pretty tight in the center. Untreated center.
We'll get rid of that once we get this front end set. And again, the front end is, it's not so much for speed, it's more for handling, and you will feel the effects of having a properly tuned front end when you get to 10, 15, 20 laps into a run. You won't have a right front spring that was way too high, and now that the tires are worn off, now you're feeling the effects of it.
And what he's talking about there is the speeds will be down, the downforce will be down, and the front will be up in the air, allowing air underneath the car, which just causes a real erratic feel.
All right. So now, so this went up just a little bit, which is fine, and this has come down. So now we're getting close. They're almost, it's still a little bit higher than I want it to be, but we're getting real, real close. The splitter actually even went down. So now we're at 0.8 and 0.9. Let me go to this splitter page. It's a little bit higher, so it's a lot easier to read. Yeah, that looks pretty good. There's also a tab. I don't know if you guys use my workbook or not, but there's also a tab that shows the track splitter on each side, and anytime you see the little tick marks, that shows the splitter is tapping or hitting. And I put something in there that if it's on throttle, as long as it don't upset the car, a lot of times you'll feel that. Like this one right here is probably right when, see, I'm off throttle, but if I go back before it, it's not hitting. So that's just weight transfer causing that tick. I'm not going to get the splitter off the ground for that one little tick, but, you know, upon release of the throttle, that's just taking it too far. You'll have a splitter that's so far up in the air, you wouldn't gain any advantage on that. It'd probably hurt you more than it helped you. All right, so we still need to come down just a little bit. So let's go down. I think we were still about a tenth and a half, maybe, not quite. Let's go down. That puts it about a little over a half a tenth. So let's do two more. Hit apply. And we'll go right back over here, because after we finish this next lap, I'll want to see it. I'm going to go back over here and put it down to our new packer. Everything stayed the same as far as deflection. So now we're at a 4.163. Yes, this is time consuming, and y'all should feel sorry for me having to build these sets for the team because it takes a lot of time. So we do math. Again, I didn't pay attention to what it was. It's 4.163. So I'm going to click on that, put 163 back in there. Hit OK. Now this moved, but it doesn't mean that's where we're at, because this shows that now we're below. We went too far. we haven't run a lap with the new Packers, so we need to go find out what the true value is. All right, Dalton, there you go. And if you have any questions or, trying to figure out what is he talking about, what is all these numbers, I'll answer them for you. I had to learn them myself, but I wouldn't use them if they didn't help us. This is why Chad Knaus gets paid a lot of money.
Hey Chris, we've got a question in the chat. Some people are having issues getting the workbook saved to the right directory. So if we've got a little bit of time after we're done with the
Yep.
setup walkthrough, can we
Yep, we'll do
show
it.
that? Okay, sounds good.
Still tight, Dalton, I'm assuming, but you don't feel like it's hitting the track, do you? Other than that big bump in through?
I feel more tight in turn 1 and 2. Like I have to use a lot of brake to get it go up the track.
Yeah. And that's probably going to be due to that ballast. Again, we're using a fixed setup, and they got a 58 ballast in there.
Yeah, we haven't touched ballast, we haven't touched tape.
Yeah, we haven't touched track bars, anything. Bumps, rebounds.
1.61.
Okay.
So throughout this process, you don't see a whole lot of change in lap times, and that's simply because we're dialing in those ride heights under load, splitter heights, rear end height, and once that's set, then we can start working on the feel.
Right.
That basically what that'll give us is long run consistency, overall security in the car.
All right, so I got wow. So now we're at .43 and .45. Now I could probably get closer, but that's 2/100ths of an inch off. I think I'm gonna let it slide. Our splitter looks good. We're at .7, .8. Still think.
And those are the averages. The left arrow, down arrow is the low point. The second arrow is the high point. The right yellow diamond is the averages. That's what he's referring to here.
Yep. Generally, you're going to have an average of the right side being slightly higher just because of this hump down the back straightaway. And also, we're turning left. I mean, you're going to apply more force to the right side of the car. So, I mean, that's just natural. Everybody's going to do that. We're still below 4, which I'm liking that. We're still rolling over too much on the right side in the rear. A little bit in the front, but we can solve that with track bar, because I'm sure Dalton and myself and a few others that like to drive the car loose. So I'm going to leave this where it's at. So our shock springs are set. That I don't want to mess with them anymore. I could fine tune them if we were going to run this series or we were going to run these races. But when this is all done, whatever Dalton ends up with that we end up with on the stream, you can have. So you don't have to go through this process. But if you want to go side by side with it to see if you can grasp it, you're more than welcome to. So I'm going to go back and I think we need to get rid of some of that weight, Dalton. Because no matter what we do to this front end, time it, don't time it, whatever, it's not going to, I mean, you're talking about 54% nosebleed. Now, this may take it too far. It may not be far enough. This is a guess. You really won't know. Dalton drives a looser car just like I do, so I'm going to move this down. Not all the way out, but I am going to take, I mean, well, we at 58, might as well say 60. We can go to 28. Yeah, so I'll go just a little bit past halfway. Now, ballast usually sits underneath the driver's seat, obviously, on the frame rails or tungsten or whatever they is legal to use now. But they do that because you're turning left. So that's why you'll see when you remove the ballast that both sides didn't come up evenly. The left side came up because we slid it back towards the rear of the car. So there's only one thing we need to do, and that's just go back down on the perches. All right, that's as low as we can go. Hit apply. Now we are failing because we shifted the weight from the front to the back. So now our rear end that was right on the borderline is close. All I need to do, and we're going to keep the cross weight the same, is we'll bring one side up, one click to pass, bring the other side up to pass. We're still at a 57 cross weight, which is where we started. All right, there you go, Dawson. Roll with that.
All right.
So your time should pick up, but that entry to center should pick up as well.
Again, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in, and we hope it helps. Again, feel free to use the chat and ask questions, and we'll get to them. Also, just so everyone's aware, after this tutorial is over, we will put up another room. The password to that room will be posted on the website. We will share this setup that we built here together, and be there to answer any questions you may have, whether it be setup changes, whether it be technical with your computers and Motec and Mu and whatever else we use to here in this tutorial today.
Yeah, I'm just trying not to be too technical, but you have to understand the dynamics of why things are getting moved. You know, when you look at a VRS set or somebody that posts a public set, how did they get there? Did they go through the same steps? No. But there's no wrong way to build a setup. I mean, the only bad way to build a setup is to put adjustments in because you don't know the line. If you drive a line that's not supposed to be driven, or you're not driving it right, you will chase yourself over and over and over again. There's no setup adjustment in the garage, telemetry, Excel sheets. There's nothing that I could do. I can give you the exact same setup, and somebody who doesn't know the line is going to think it's the worst setup that they've ever drove. Was that better, Dalton?
Yeah, but on the first lap I did overdrive entry to one just a little. But I mean, that felt much better.
Okay. So let's take a look at telemetry. I just want to make sure the splitter, because we just moved that, so I want to make sure the splitter's not coming up too much. And it's not. We're still at 8 and we're still at 9. So it's really not moving. The rear end's kind of staying the same, so is that. So ballast didn't really affect, you know, your ride height. Ballast is something that I'll actually fine tune personally toward the end of the setup process, just because it usually doesn't affect anything else on the car. I will tell you that ballast, toes, and track bars, this is going for, I'll show you this sheet real quick. This is wheel spin. Ballast toes and track bars affect wheel spin dramatically, especially toward the end of the run. So if you're finding that your wheel spin or you're getting loose, I've taken ballast. Didn't need it till lap 20, but it made a huge difference because I decided not to go too far down on the ballast in the beginning, and I had it was keeping that nose, and I had a lot of drive off after 20 laps. The downside is you're giving up a little bit of speed in the short run. So it's just a personal preference. So we really didn't hurt the front, so let's go down some more. Let's go. Well, we can't. Let's go down. It's not a big change. Let's go down to 30. Of course, now we're failing again. But we'll go down. Remember, it affects the left side, so we're going to go down one click on the left front perch. Now I just know this by heart just because we're too high. I'm going to go up one click on the right rear perch. All that did was push the weight back down on that left front, and we're going to go one click back on our cambers, and now we're back. We're back flashing. Everything looks okay. Let's do it again. Let's see if that 30 helps you from the 40. Now, there's a lot of people that'll probably go, now, wait a minute, he went from 58 to 30. That's a drastic change. It is, but it's not really, because let's not forget, we have 57% cross weight in the car. If we had 52% cross weight and made that drastic, yes, Dalton would definitely feel it quicker. So sometimes adjustments that are talked about publicly as a big major adjustment really ain't major, depending on what's going on with the car or what you've got in the car.
Yeah, the high cross weight, that left rear is just an anchor. I mean, it's driven down into the track by that cross weight. So if you're running a flatter rear end, cross weight wise, closer to 50%, you're going to notice those ballast changes a lot more.
Felt pretty good.
There you go.
31.313.
So we went from a 32 lap time to a 31.3. And we're on 100% usage. We're clear skies. And we still hadn't even touched the tape yet.
Track temp's still hot. It's still 105. It's only dropped 3 degrees.
Keep those tires right on the seam. You'll see in a race, some guys will sit there and run that first groove going into one. It's transition bacon. That's only going to last for a couple of laps, but I can promise you, if you stay there, that car will throw you to the wall as the laps keep ticking off because it's progressive banking. So the splitter gets upset by running. Same thing that used to be at Michigan. Where you had to run that second groove. You can't really see it, but you can feel it in the car. Let's wait for this thing to load. All right, there it goes. So now, yeah, so we're still at 8. We're actually coming down a little bit. The ballast didn't affect the ride heights at all, hardly. Now, that ballast, because we shifted it back, now we're getting under 4. We're still not hitting the track. and we're not staying up in the air. So the closer you are to the track, especially in the corners, with the front end, the splitter, the rear end, the whole goal here is to get air out from underneath the car, especially in the corners. Michigan, you'll want it out everywhere. Down the straightaways, that's where maximum speed, maximum downforce comes from. So you're really not moving a whole lot, Dalton. The only thing that I think we need to do, and we'll try it because we haven't done it yet. I think you can run 55 or 56 tape here, so we can do it. Matter of fact, let's do it. Let's go to I think it's. We'll try 56, and I'm gonna do one last thing. If it doesn't mess it up, let's just go ahead and take that ballast down to its final. Yep, there we go. Anything, yeah, you're good after this. Now I will say, before Dalton finishes this, there's some speed and some camber gain in these casters. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and do it. The higher the casters, the more dynamic camber you can get. Now, things may fail. This is no secret. I mean, it's in most of your VRS sets, the forum. I mean, I don't like the side that one's higher, so I'm just going to go lower.
Also, in case you guys didn't know, tape does add downforce, so it will help with aero.
Yep. So let's get these toes back. Typically, 1-in-1 is not so bad. Let's go ahead and do that on your toes. If these were both negatives, that's going to give you a little bit more stability coming off the corner, especially late in the run. It won't let the front end sway a whole lot. Can we go up? Yep. Let's go up to. See if we can get this. I don't think we can. Yes, we can. So now we're flashing all the way across. Our tape's up. Yep. After this, it's pretty much going to be personal preference. You know, track bars, I will say, and this is just personal, the higher the track bars, to me, and I did a run with Corey Vincent, one of the Peak Series drivers. I had a setup that was way looser, if you looked at it in the garage, than his was, and his track bars were lower than mine, and I ran mine, I think, at 10 and 13, or maybe over at Charlotte. I can't remember. And I found that higher track bar, especially on the left side, the higher the track bar is on the left side, as the run progresses, it actually tightens the car up. And if you've drove any of these camber sets, you know, after 20 laps, you're almost wrecking loose if you're that fast in the beginning. And for some reason, higher track bars on the left side, the left side track bar actually lets you get into the corner better, personal feel, but then it tightens you up on exit. So that may be something to play with. To me, a 8 and 12 would tighten up over the long run than a 6 and 12 would. But the bumps and rebounds, I'm not a fan. This is all fixed too. I'm not a fan of running these rebounds. Dalton plays with these a lot in the A car, and he finds a lot of success, especially on the long run, with those. But the bumps and rebounds and the track bars are pretty much just going to be personal preference. But I honestly believe that any one of y'all can probably drive this set without breaking loose. Just run this last lap, Dalton, and then we'll get out of here and open up that room. See what that tape does now, and those casters.
A couple things, question in the chat. First stage is a setup building. Are you looking for comfort or speed? Typically, you're just looking to dial that car in, those ride heights first. That gives you the speed, and then later on, you'll be addressing those things of comfort. Like, as Chris mentioned, we've got track bars we haven't touched, bumps and rebounds we haven't touched. Those are typical driver comfort adjustments.
Yeah, you usually worry about the feel of the car more towards the end. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
You can get speed out of the car, but if you can't handle it, it doesn't matter if you're a tenth faster than the whole field. If you wreck it, there goes your I rating, and there goes your race. There goes all your time you spent because you were trying to put the car on the top of the leaderboard. You can't do that now. You will not go in a session and be under the same conditions with the way the weather is now. There you go. Drive the hell out of it, Dalton.
Yeah, my steering offset, it moved because
Oh, I forgot.
31.5.
Yeah. Anytime you move the casters and stuff like that, you're definitely gonna fix it and go back out there. That was a botch lap. You're making my setup look like crap. I want a better driver.
yeah.
But yeah, the conditions will never be the same. If somebody hits a 31.2 and 20 minutes later somebody else comes in the room and they run a 20 or a 31.1, is their setup better? Who knows? Chances are maybe not. But the track conditions, the cloud cover, the temperature, the wind, everything has changed dynamically now. 3 years ago, yeah, you could the first minute of that room to the last minute of that room, there was no track usage, no wear, no anything that would affect that. So you could almost know exactly what your times are and compare. Now, I like it this way. Just because somebody runs a faster time than I do or Dalton doesn't mean that's what's going to happen on the track. So you can't get caught up in somebody's 0.3 faster. Well, you may have ran your lap 30 minutes earlier and he's just now coming in to the room. There you go. We'll tone this down a little bit. I don't know that they'll be able to drive. Remember what I said, the casters help the camber game. Well, we just added more dynamic camber to the car just by moving them casters up. That, and we also moved the tape. But I don't think the tape made you that loose. But it should start tightening up just because we've got a little bit higher track bars, so it won't take long. And again, what I said at the first part of the stream, tire pressures being low and cold are going to make the setup on the first or second lap feel like it's loose. It's really not. Just let the tire pressures get some heat and build up, and it'll start coming to you. Now, if the setup's still loose on lap 5 and you're still having to wheel it, then yes, you need to make a change. Do about 2 more laps, and then we'll take a look at the tires, and then we'll get out of here.
Reminder: we want to go through the workbook, the directory to save that,
Yes.
etc.
There you go. From now on, that's how you drive. Isn't that what Will Smith told Mark Lawrence?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, so now
No, that
now
was-
we're to the
That was me.
but
Oh,
now
I
we're to
know.
the point where we can start making those adjustments for driver comfort and then
Yep.
start running 10 lap runs, 20 lap runs, make sure you have the long run speed and make those changes that you need. Not changing the base setup that you have, just changing those minor things that affect those long runs and driver comfort.
yeah, and I'm gonna, since we're gonna do this public, Dalton, I'm gonna go ahead and take this back to 30 because you were pretty dialed in with that. So we'll move this down. Yeah. I typically, one last thing too, you don't want to put the rebounds all the way up in a place like this. You want that tire to be able to fall, or that wheel to be able to fall straight down not, I wouldn't say as fast as it can, but over a bump. You don't need it tucked in to the car because you lose front grip. So as far as the rebounds, I don't know that I would go all the way, but I would definitely go up on the rebounds, just because keep in mind when you hit that throttle with the rebounds being low, let's say like it's 7 on this right side, you are picking the front end up. Now granted, a place like this, yeah, you probably could get away with 7 and it would feel okay. You do that at Michigan, you're losing drag. It's just going, I mean, you got to have that thing pulled down. So it depends on the track that you're going to. Bumps kind of the same way. So, yeah. So Dalton, do me a favor, and you can save that as a public. It's ready, and then we'll go to the. Oh, they were asking about the Motec directory. Is that right? Is that what?
Yeah, what location you save the workbook in, so that you can pull it up in Motec.
When you download it, let's say it goes to your downloads folder. If you'll once you download it from the website, if you'll right click on it, let me see. I hate to do it because I've already got it installed.
Basically, the directory you need to change it to or save it to is
Your documents, yeah.
documents right there next to iRacing. You'll have a Motec and then I2, then workspaces.
Yep. Yep. You need to extract it. Go into your downloads folder or wherever your downloads go to once you download it. Right click on it and extract it, and it's going to ask you for a path of where to extract it to. All you need to do is extract it to your documents folder. That's it. Don't put it in the iRacing folder. Just straight to documents, and you will see a Motec folder there when you open up Motec or I2 or whatever. And when you open up Motec, it'll ask you. I tell you what. Let me delete this real quick. I'll try it. Let me close Motec out. No. Yes. Continue. So I'm going to do it for you. I should be okay. So let's go to downloads.
I don't know if you can pull it up on your screen, Chris.
Yeah, I am. Okay. So let me move this. Let me move this back over here. So I'm going to go to the website real quick. Just to download it again. This is the workbook, right? That they're having a problem with. So we download. And now I'm going to open up my downloads folder. You can't see that, but I'll bring it down here to you. So I'm going to right click it. Extract all. Here's another one. It's going to ask me where I want it to go. I'm just going to put documents and extract. Yes. There it is. So now there's your iRacing folder. There's all your stuff. And I'll go ahead and open up MU. And so when you, or MU, Motec, so when you'll open a workspace, file, open workspace, you'll see it there. If it asks you to browse or you don't see it, or right there, you can always go to browse and it'll open up all of your workspaces for under your documents folder. You would need to open up a workspace that has the red icon. So I would double click that and you'll find it right there. It brings it down there, hit open. Now it says that mine's already open, but then there's all the tabs there. There's some more tabs that I've put up there. But if you have any questions one-on-one, you can send a chat, however you want to do it. But Dustin, if you want to set up that other room, you're good to go.
All right, sounds good. For those of you who are tuned in now, we'll be setting up another room. Password will be posted on the website.
Yeah, it's easy. We're just going to make the password ERG.
There you go. Password's ERG. We'll set it up with the exact same weather, time of day, and password will be ERG. And again, we'll be sharing this set that we built here together and asking any questions you may have in modifying that setup, or if you're building your own based on what you may have picked up today. We'll be there to help with that. I'll get that room up here within 10 minutes.
Yep, we'll be good on that. And I'll get Dalton to jump in that room, and we're just going to share it with everybody that's in there, so it's not individual. So, but if you have any questions, I'll stick around for probably an hour or so, maybe longer. It depends on if there's any help. I just hope that some of y'all see that there's no wrong way. You don't have to build a max armor symmetry or a max sway bar and all this. We took a fixed setup and got the car dialed in. Yes, telemetry has a lot to do with it, and you don't have to go as far as what we do, but I've done it so many times, it's a whole lot easier, especially when you get to the A car to do it. So, and we've been pretty good and dominant in the A car. Dalton's been, he's really impressed me from his 2,000 I rating in May of last year to almost 7,000 now. So, yes, he has to drive the car, but it's not all about the setups, and we just build stuff differently than everybody else does. There's no wrong way to do it, but if he didn't know how to drive the car, I can promise you these setups wouldn't be nearly as good and bring him to the front. So Keegan does a good job with the VRS stuff. He's under a little bit more of a microscope than we are, just because he has to build stuff that the whole public or paying people can drive, because they pay for, where we can be a little bit more relaxed and make it looser or tighter on our part. So I give Keegan a lot of credit. He's got a tough job to do that and still manage a DWC season. So I'm sure Keegan's one-on-one help has helped a lot of people too. So, all right, I'll be over in that room. I appreciate everybody. Thank you, though.